Good afternoon, everybody. May we ask everybody to return to their seats and so that we can proceed to the next session this afternoon. Welcome to this session. I am Joseph Capuno from the University of the Philippines. I am your moderator in this session. So we have three speakers. One is from the Department of Trade and Industry, Ms. Alisa Janine Salazar. The next speaker is from the Industrial Engineering Department of the College of Engineering of the University of the Philippines, Professor Milian Tamayo. And the third speaker is from the Minimal Government Thinkers, Mr. Bienvenido Oplas Jr. So this is how I propose to conduct the session. We'll give each speaker 20 minutes to present their pitch. And then we'll reserve the last 10 minutes of this session for Q&A. Okay. Is Ms. Salazar around already? Otherwise, I propose to proceed with Ms. Milian Tamayo. The first speaker, in this case, Professor Tamayo's paper is on policies on alternative fuel vehicles, increased public transportation use and fuel economy in the Philippines, integrated assessment of sustainability implications. Professor Tamayo, please.
Thank you, Professor Capuno. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Milian Magigad Tamayo, and I will be presenting my work, which has a current title, Policies on Alternative Fuel Vehicles, Increased Public Transportation Use, and Fuel Economy in the Philippines, Integrated Assessment of Sustainability Implications. It's a very long title, so I'm still working on it. And I'd really appreciate your comments and insights on how to move forward with this research, as it is a work in progress at the end of my presentation. Let me start by showing a Sankey diagram of the Philippine energy balance. This was created by the International Energy Agency for the year 2012. The pipes here represent energy flow in terms of million tons of oil equivalent, or MTOE. The thickness of the pipe represents the relative amount of energy flows supplied through various fuel sources, which are shown on the left, and which are used for different sectors, which are shown on the right. The total consumption of the Philippines in 2012 amounted to about 24 million tons of oil equivalent, of which a little over 8 was used by the transportation sector. That is about 1/3 of total energy consumption of the country can be attributed to the transportation sector. This trend is similar to most other countries in the world. So it is not surprising that the transportation sector has huge repercussions in terms of global warming, air quality, and thus health and well-being. Given this, it is imperative that conversations and efforts towards sustainable and inclusive energy systems include energy use in the transportation sector as a key piece. In this work, I aim to develop a publicly available integrated assessment tool to evaluate the sustainability implications of transportation policies. I start with implications on energy security, health, mobility cost, and climate change. Now, over 90% of oil used for transport is currently imported. This leaves the country immensely vulnerable to the volatile international oil market. geopolitical and economic dynamics that we have very little control over hugely affects the price and reliability of our transportation system. Now, since our transportation system relies heavily on the combustion of oil, criteria air pollutants such as particulate matters that are detrimental to health are accumulated in the air, causing several forms of respiratory illnesses that lead to morbidity and mortality. With the volatility of the market, cost of mobility is also affected. In addition, congestion and less efficient travel patterns that is influenced by many factors such as volume of vehicles on the road network design, driving skills, and driving etiquette also contribute to higher mobility costs. As a specific example of the impact of driving pattern on energy efficiency, I spend about 1,500 pesos to drive 150 kilometers here in Metro Manila, while I spend the same amount for a 500-kilometer long drive from Manila to Tuguegarao City in the north. Now, lastly, combustion of oil also means production of more transportation related greenhouse gas emissions. I cite here three related Philippine-based studies. One is a work conducted by colleagues from the College of Engineering through the National Engineering Center, which was commissioned by the Department of Energy. It was done or published in 2015. It's entitled Technical Study Report on Alternative Fuels and Energy Efficiency in Road Transport. So in this work, engineers from the UP College of Engineering conducted some on-road and chassis dynamometer tests on auto LPG, electric, and diesel jeepneys along the UP campus SM North route. So through this work, fuel and energy consumption of the said vehicle types were estimated, drive cycles were also estimated, and cost and revenue as well. Second, we have the work by ALMEC Corporation in 2014, which is entitled Roadmap for Transport Infrastructure Development for Metro Manila and its surrounding areas. In this work, travel demand forecasts were estimated for 2030 using 2012 as base year with the use of models such as the MMUTIS and SHS-H, and some scenario analysis on several transport programs were also performed. Thirdly, we have the work by Verhel and Tiglao, also from the UP College of Engineering, which was published in the Philippine Engineering Journal in 2005. In the Journal of the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Studies in 2005, entitled Assessment of Integrated Environmental Strategies for Metro Manila, which basically reviewed government programs for 2005, 2010, and 2015 with focus again on Metro Manila. In summary, these works performed, they did a pretty good job on providing detailed modeling and discussion on the transportation sector. However, most of these studies, the three studies that I mentioned, as well as most other studies that are available right now, focus on Metro Manila. And the results are static because input parameters are based on existing policies and with the use of past data. Data are also either too specific or outdated, and there is usually focus on just one of these three, the environmental cost or health impacts of transportation policies. Now, the country does not lack goals in terms of progress in the transportation sector. So according to the Department of Energy, it wants 100,000 electric tricycles on the road by 2017. According to the Electric Vehicles Association of the Philippines, it wants 1 million electric vehicles by 2020. And there are more numbers that you can see if you go through policies and targets on the transportation sector, and I will show you some of the more important ones later. Now, there is also a major policy on alternative fuel vehicles, which is Senate Bill number 2151, also known as an act providing incentives for the mainstream use, manufacture, assembly, and conversion of electric, hybrid, and other alternative fuel vehicles and for other purposes. So this is still awaiting enactment. Okay. This policy banks on the rationale that the AFV industry can, one, improve air quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, two, promote development of new technology, also energy efficiency, security, and conservation, as well as speed up deployment of cleaner technology. Now, what are the benefits of this policy? So it basically provides non-fiscal incentives, first of which is priority in registration and issuance of plate numbers to alternative fuel vehicles. Secondly is priority in franchise application for public utility companies that would rely on electric vehicles or other forms of AFVs. Thirdly, exemption from Unified Vehicular Reduction Program or the number coding scheme. And lastly, provision of free parking spaces in new establishments. So we do not lack goals and big policies. Other policies are even underway. Now, we ask, are these goals and policies actually moving us to our objectives, for instance, of sustainable development? Moreover, do decision makers at the local and national levels have the capacity to evaluate draft or implemented policies? Are data publicly available to enable decision makers to make evidence-based decisions? Based on literature research, conversations with fellow researchers, as well as policymakers themselves, we lack accessible tools that can help decision makers evaluate past and future transportation policies at the national and especially at the local levels. So apparently, knowledge and capacity is concentrated in a few circles, such as in academia, consultants, and funding agencies. So our goal in this work is to develop an integrated, Excel-based assessment tool for transportation policies and programs. One that can help decision makers, especially at the local level, in estimating the sustainability implications of fleet changes and other transportation policies. This will be somehow similar to the alternative fuel life cycle environmental and economic transportation or AFLEET tool of 2013, which is a module of the GREET 2013 tool by the Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago. AFLEET basically aims to assist decision makers to make decisions on transportation in line with the US Department of Energy Clean Cities program. So let me just show you some snapshots of the AFLEET tool to give you a better idea. So this one shows you a spreadsheet of the key inputs. This is available online, so you just search, use the keyword AFLEET 2013, and you can actually download the Excel-based tool. Okay, so the user can input key parameters in this spreadsheet, such as the number of light-duty vehicles by vehicle type, okay, the annual vehicle mileage, in our case, vehicle kilometers traveled, okay, fuel economy, and other inputs. And then the tool can calculate for you the total cost of ownership, the fleet energy and emissions footprint, and it also provides for transparency, accessibility, and customizability of the data used to estimate the impacts of the fleet. Okay. And this is especially helpful at the local level if the local government unit actually has the capacity to collect data that is more precise at the local level. Now, this is a schematic diagram of our proposed framework. On the left are basically the policies that I want to start with. Okay, so I have there 5 policies right now. And then you can see there the model inputs, okay, such as the projected number of vehicle registrations, the emission factors for the different fuel types, resource use factors, vehicle technology specifications such as fuel economy, battery energy density, what have you, vehicle miles or vehicle kilometers traveled, energy mix, population, and other things that might be useful as I go through iterations of this model. And then I would like to start with these 4 sustainability impacts: energy security, mobility cost, health impact, climate impact, and come up with these model outputs including energy sufficiency ratio, energy price, particulate matter emissions, and global warming potential. Okay, so let me just go through some important statistics in the transportation sector very quickly. So this graph basically shows that considering the national vehicle fleet, over 50% is actually motorcycles and tricycles, and over 80% are for private use. Now in NCR, it's quite similar. Over 40% are still motorcycles and tricycles, but over 90% are for private use. Now, this graph shows you the national annual total registrations from 2010 to 2013. And basically, the message of this graph is that cars, utility vehicles, motorcycles, and tricycles combined make up almost 90% of total annual registrations from 2010 to 2013. We can see the same pattern for NCR, okay? And if we just simplify those two, okay, you can see here, comparing the national and the NCR statistics, the ratio of cars versus total registrations is twice in NCR compared to the national ratio, while the ratio of motorcycles and tricycles in NCR is 2/3 of the national ratio. I started here with 2 simple models for predicting the number of vehicle registrations for 2016 to 2030. One is a linear model and the other is a polynomial model. I only used 7 data points, which is, of course, a very small data set. So this can be further refined by including a bigger data series and using a more sophisticated modeling tool such as regression analysis to include other potentially influencing variables. Okay, so these were the scenarios that I mentioned earlier. In the interest of time, I'll just proceed to the theoretical framework. You can email me, feel free to email me later if you have questions regarding the numbers for the different scenarios. Okay, so this is a theoretical framework. These are the model inputs, particular model inputs that I will be needing, and I divided them by region, by vehicle type, and by fuel type. So as you can see, some of the parameters have 2 subscripts, so I want to differentiate these parameters by region or vehicle type because based on previous studies, both mine and other scholars, there could be significant differences in the sustainability implications of nationally aggregated vehicle fleet sustainability implications and at the local level. Okay, so what are the existing data? Right now, we have estimated registrations for all regions and vehicle types. We have energy efficiency for electric public utility jeepneys only. So basically, the message of this is that the data, the crucial data that we actually need to run this model are not publicly available. And this has been the main message of a lot of policymakers that I have talked with. That's why it takes sometimes 80% of the time to just collect data instead of devoting that time to have creative thinking on policy formulation. So some of the observations and challenges, just to wrap up, there is lack of updated travel pattern data, such as vehicle kilometers traveled per vehicle type by region, lack of up-to-date empirical data on vehicle system technical performance, and other crucial data. So for future work, we basically want to estimate all the said lacking data and run the model and disseminate the tool. So these are some of the things that one can think about to proceed with policy in the transportation sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tamayo. Our next speaker is from the Department of Trade and Industry. She is Ms. Aliza Janine Salazar, and she's going to talk on the effects of alternative energy production and other macroeconomic variables on Philippine oil import dependency. May we have Ms. Salazar? Is from the Department of Trade and Industry. She is Ms. Aliza Janine Salazar, and she's going to talk on the effects of alternative energy production and other macroeconomic variables on Philippine oil import dependency. May we have Ms. Salazar?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Eliza from Department of Trade and Industry. Today, I'll be presenting my undergrad thesis entitled Effects of Alternative Energy Production and Other Macroeconomic Variables on Philippine Oil Imports Dependency. Basically, primarily, this study aims to analyze the annual trend of total crude oil importation in the Philippines from 1990 to 2013. Second is to determine the disaggregated actual share of total crude, is to determine the actual share of total crude oil consumption in the Philippines from 1990 to 2013. Third is to assess the effects of the production of alternative energy sources and other macroeconomic variables on total crude oil imports in the Philippines from 1990 to 2013. And last but not the least is to describe the trend of the production of alternative energy source in the Philippines from 1990 to 2013. Going back, I'll be presenting about the basic history of AES, or alternative energy source, in the Philippines. AUTOGAS production started on 1990 without any prior government policies or memorandums issued, followed by the natural gas production on 1994. There are various lists of government policies like the Memorandum Circular Number 55, which stipulated the promotion of cocoa biodiesel as a form of alternative fuel. Second is Presidential Decree Number 1442, which specifies the development and production of geothermal resources as a form of alternative also. Third is Republic Act Number 7156, which stipulated the provision to provide incentives to mini hydroelectric power developers. And last but not the least is Executive Order Number 462, as amended by Executive Order 232, which uses a provision to explore, develop, utilize, and commercialize ocean, solar, and wind energy resources as a form of alternative to power source and any other usage. In here, you can see the two stringent government policies, which is the Republic Act number 9513, or the Biofuels Act of 2006, and Republic Act number 9367, or Renewable Energy Act of 2008. Renewable Energy Act of 2008 specifies the provision to reproduce natural gas, geothermal energy, solar energy, wind energy, and biomass. On the other hand, biofuels production aims to develop the biofuels in the Philippines. This has been the basis for my economic model later in my methodology. Class provided reasons on why alternative sources not significantly affect crude oil importation in the Philippines. First, there are three significant reasons he had provided. First is that it is difficult to acquire first-of-a-kind processing system that would cater to the necessity of AES source. And second is the lack of distribution facilities for AES. And third is there is an existing market for fossil energy and gasoline, which if AES would penetrate, there would be problems in terms of price. Maybe it couldn't compete with the pressing market forces. Crane provided the study on implementation of US Energy Independence and Security Act of 2006. TTIPI found that renewable energy accounted for 37% share of total primary energy supplies, which shows us the great potential for AES in the Philippines. The second energy demand outlook proved that oil consumption increased only at annual growth rate of 1.6%, because geothermal energy accounted for per % annual growth rate as a power source. These are just the basis of my paper in using my independent variables. Philippine current status. Philippine, and according to NSO, oil was a primary energy source at 33.9%, then followed by the geothermal energy at 22.8%. In 2008, natural gas accounted for 32%, geothermal energy for 18%, hydroelectric power 16%, wind energy and solar energy only at less than 1% of 60,820,985 megawatt-hour. Natural gas increased from 14% to 18% in 2002 and reached 32% in 2008. In 2010, according to DOE, oil importation was displaced at 401,699,535 liters. Hysteresis effect. According to Sheikh Yamani, a Saudi Arabian oil minister, if there will be a government policies implemented, the countries who is implementing that policy will be at the initial state. And when the action is, when the implementation or necessary actions are taken, if ever there would be restraint or removal of the action, at least it had a right at the final state. This is my conceptual framework for the study. My dependent variable is the total crude oil imports. It is the measure of total crude oil imports in the Philippines divided by population, measured in terms of kiloton. Kiloton is the standard measure used by the DOE in measuring AES. And natural gas production until AUTOGAS production is all measured in kiloton. Other macroeconomic variables is specified here as the crude oil price and domestic demand. These are the intervening variables which may affect or may not affect the independent variable in causation to dependent variable. Domestic demand here is defined as the positive difference between total final energy consumption and total domestic production. Hence, it is a shortage. Domestic demand is simply the shortage. Methodology. This is the functional relationship used to analyze the AES and crude oil price domestic demand as it affects total crude oil imports in the Philippines. As you can see here, I haven't included the other variables because there are no significant data points and it wouldn't run in software such as eViews, Data, and SPSS. So I just use hydroelectric power, geothermal energy, biomass, AUTOGAS production, and domestic demand and crude oil price as the independent variable that might cause the change in total crude oil importation. To measure the long run and short run relationships between total crude oil imports, I have employed the basic vector error correction model. The error correction coefficient would tell the speed of adjustment where the model is adjusted to fix the disequilibrium, because the study also attempted to measure the short-run and long-run effects of AES, or alternative energy source, and other macroeconomic variables on total crude oil imports. Results. Trend in total crude oil imports. As you can see here, it is decreasing. The highest oil importation is last 1996 because it is wherein Executive Order 890 was implemented, which removes the tariff rates on total crude oil on crude oil. And the lowest crude oil imports is last 2009 because of the resolution number 9 series of 2013, which stipulates the net metering, wherein if one household would employ the change in net system, for instance, employing the usage of the installment of the wind energy or solar energy system, it would be that total production in the employed system using AES would be deducted to the actual usage, and that would save to the household owner. This is just the total crude oil imports growth. Total supply of crude oil in the Philippines from 1990 to 2013, as you can observe here, is highly volatile and downward shifting. On the other hand, total demand for crude oil is increasing, drastically increasing, which shows the basis for one of my independent variable, domestic demand, which is the shortage. This is the disaggregated actual share of crude oil consumption in the Philippines. The highest consumption came from the residential area or the manufacturing, commercialization, and household usage. The lowest came from other non-energy use like battery usage, battery creation, and asphalt. AUTOGAS and hydroelectric power. The lowest production in AUTOGAS production was because of its low cost potential, and it is difficult to shift to AUTOGAS as an alternative to crude oil, because basically motor vehicles, machineries are catered for crude oil and not for AUTOGAS. So we need to change the machineries itself in the car. So it would be difficult. That accounted for the lowest AUTOGAS production, as you can see here. And hydroelectric power production is greatly affected by its sensitivity, the sensitivity of its system or power plants in disasters. As you can see, in the Philippines, we are often visited by typhoons and any other natural disasters, which makes hydropower production not flourishing in its reproduction. This is just the growth rate for AUTOGAS and hydroelectric power. Solar and wind energy production, as you can see here, is not that flourishing here in the Philippines. So we need to invest in more solar panels, and through the help of the government, natural gas production is also increasing. It is also seen as a good alternative to AES. So the regression results shows that the AUTOGAS production increases. Kiloton increase in AUTOGAS production increases total crude oil imports by 120,495 kiloton. And it is significant because the probability is less than 5%. Domestic demand is also increasing total crude oil imports because it is less than 5%, as you can see in the probability section. A kiloton increase in domestic demand increases total crude oil imports by 78,743 kiloton. Crude oil price, a 1 unit increase in US crude, increase in US dollar per barrel would increase total crude oil imports by 4.09 US dollars. And it is not that significant because it's just 0.0579%. It satisfies the goodness of fit because R squared is at least 70%. Probability of F stat is less than 5%, and Durbin-Watson stat is closer to 2. I just employed augmented DICKEY Fuller test to check for unit roots. And as you can see here, the absolute value of ADF t-test is less than its critical value. Hence, there is no unit root. And we can run the VECM model. GRANGER, in employing the GRANGER causality test results show that thus GRANGER cause total crude oil imports because the probability is less than 5%. Also, AUTOGAS, thus GRANGER cause total crude oil imports because it is 2.49%. Total crude oil imports, thus GRANGER cause crude oil price because the probability is 3.35%. VECM system estimates of alternative energy production, macroeconomic variable, and total crude oil imports results showed speed of adjustment, an error correction coefficient of negative 0.2078. The negative coefficient implies that short-run deviations of alternative energy source would revert back to the long-run trend at the rate of 20.78%. And it is significant because the probability is less than 5%, as you can see here. And the result also shows, and it also implies that the hydroelectric power production, geothermal energy production, biomass production, and crude oil price have long-run causality to total crude oil imports. In doing Wald's test, it is just the hydroelectric power production which shows short-run effects, short-run significant negative effect on total crude oil imports. And the others have no short-run effects on total crude oil imports. Conclusion, production of hydroelectric power exerts significant negative effect on total crude oil imports both in the long run and short run. On the other hand, geothermal energy production, biomass production, and crude oil price have only a long-run causality in total crude oil imports. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Our third speaker is from the Minimal Government Thinkers. He's a good friend of mine. Our friendship antedated the present Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. We go a long way back. He's none other than Bienvenido Nonoy Oplas Jr. And to those of you who don't know him as well as I do, he used to be a movie actor. Now he's a serious policy thinker. His paper is on climate change and the need for cheap and stable energy sources. Nonoy, please.
Thank you. Yeah, this presentation is a lot of data, so you have to read fast because my words will be slower than the data that I will present. So climate change and need for cheap, stable energy sources. My think tank is a free market think tank. It's a regional network. CNET is advocating free trade, free market, and free mobility in the region. Outline. Climate change is not anthropogenic. It is not man-made. It's rather more of nature-made. But they say that man-made CC means more rains and less rains, more flood and less flood, less dogs and more dogs. They are all proof of man-made CC. Third, renewable to save the planet, the case of Germany and UK. Fourth, expensive electricity plus mandatory renewables in the case of the Philippines. Toward cheap, reliable energy sources and Scambarian recommendations. Climate change is a natural cyclical event and not anthropogenic. And I will show you different types of, life is about cycle, okay? Day and night cycle, wet and dry cycle in the tropics, winter, spring, summer, and fall cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, okay? El Nino, La Nina cycles, you know? When people say that there's a Godzilla of El Nino, they are not telling the truth because the 1997-98 El Nino was perhaps worse than the current El Nino cycle. And if you have big El Nino, expect big La Nina. So we expect a La Nina by August this year. So prepare more flood, okay? Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Okay, warming, cooling. There's no such thing as everything was noble and suddenly, boom, there was warming. It's not true. Climate cycle. It shows the Roman warm period, the medieval warm period, and the modern warm period. And there was a little ice that precedes between the medieval warm period. That's why the UN, the IPCC was very shrewd because they started they started the countdown from 1750 or 1800 when there was a global cooling at the peak. So if you are in the global cooling, the temperature cannot go far lower anymore, it can only go up. Okay? Climate cycle in thousands of billions, thousands of years. No? Warming, cooling is the rule, is not the exception. the structural sea surface temperature in the South China Sea. Anyway, this data will be available on the website now, so you can enjoy the data more and analyze the data more. I did not create this data. I got all this from scientific sources. All charts, no, have sources, no. So Dr. Roy Spencer and Pacific Decadal, these are NOAA, these are government data, no. Okay. Oops. The Vostok ice core, that about 400,000 years. In fact, this data is relatively controversial because the UNIPC is saying that carbon dioxide determines the temperature. This Vostok ice core data shows that it was the reverse. It's the temperature that leads to carbon dioxide up and down with a lag of about 8,000 years. Of course, they're talking about 400,000 years data, no? From what's up with that. Ice age temperature changes in the interglacial period, no? From the hockey stick. So, up, down, warming, cooling. When people say that, the global warming is unprecedented, this is a statement of deception and dishonesty, led by the United Nations and Al Gore. Solar cycles. There are different types of cycles: short-term cycle, medium-term, and long-term cycle. This is the short-term cycle. One cycle is about 11 years on average. So the little ice age happened, the Dalton minimum happened in the solar cycle 4 and 5. Now we are in solar cycle 25, and they are talking about whether it is a Dalton minimum type or Maunder minimum type of global cooling. It looks like it's sort of a milder type of a Dalton minimum cooling. The philosophy that based on the sun climate theory developed by a Danish scientist, that an active sun drives away more galactic cosmic rays of the GCRs. The GCRs help in the ionization of clouds. More GCRs that enter the atmosphere, more clouds. So more clouds, more cooling. Less clouds, more warming. So in an active sun, it drives away the GCRs. A less active sun, it allows more GCRs. So with an inactive sun, there are more GCRs that enter the atmosphere, and there will be more clouds, and will result in cooling in the planet. There are also the Milankovitch cycles. This is in the field of physics. Now, these are long-term variation in the Earth's orbit around the sun. So you're talking about 10,000 years, 20,000 climate cycles in the Milankovitch cycles. And look at this. The different about 71 different models used by the IPCC, and the black is the trend line. They're saying that with more carbon dioxide, their forecast that the trend line is going up. More carbon dioxide, more warming. This did not happen compared to the actual data. The actual data is the one on the blue. These are air temperature data gathered by the NASA satellite using the UAH, University of Alabama in Huntsville data. No? So, while the projection goes like this, the actual data is here. So, it's a case that the theory, so-called theory, does not conform with the reality. In scientific practice, theory and data should conform with each other. If theory does not conform with data, you should throw away the theory and respect the data. The theory should go back to a hypothesis to be further battered into testing. So throw away the AGW. It's not a theory, it's a hypothesis until now. Data as of November 2015. So from January 2002 to November 2015, in fact, there was a small cooling trend of about negative 0.01 degrees Celsius per decade. It's not warming, it's cooling. And there's a data by system analyst Ira Glickstein, putting human. The result here is that the natural effect is if you are going to combine what contributed to the 0.6 degrees centigrade of warming the past century, his estimate is that about 0.1 degrees came from anthropogenic and 0.5 came from natural cycles. But that is one estimate. Okay, part 2. But man-made CC means more rains and less rains, more flood and less flood, more storms and less storms, no? The UN Algo, Greenpeace, World Wildlife Fund, CCC, etc. mean that before humanity, that our cause is evil, our having a good hotel is evil, modernity is evil because it created the global warming. So before that, there was no severe deaths and catastrophe because of use of CO2. But here, in 1362, recall during the Little Ice Age, 25,000 people died in 1219. And in, another one, more than 36,000 people died in Europe in just one whole sweep of flooding. Okay? Next. More data, 1709, 1716. We're talking about deaths by the thousands, deaths by the hundreds. Given the population that time was small, and you have thousands of deaths, so the percentage of deaths is very high. You're not talking, the numerator, you're not talking about 300 million people. Okay? You will enjoy this, archive stories. In Asia, 2,500 died in Japan in 1950. That was in 1959. 55,000 died in Pakistan in 1970s. So you're talking about it's not only in Europe. So the so-called catastrophic flooding and death of people is unprecedented. It only happened when we have more SUVs. No. Even when there was no SUVs, there are thousands of deaths of people due to flooding. Sa Pilipinas, ayan. That was in 1912. 15,000 people died in Philippine storm. And that was precisely also in Leyte. That was practically about the same time as Yolanda, no? That you're talking about more than 7,000 than Yolanda. Here, 15,000 people died in a small population in 1912. And also in 1896, no? Tidal wave in the Philippines, deluge of rains in the Philippines. So to say again and again that all this catastrophic data has no precedent is a dishonesty and a deception. Next. The case of Germany and UK, where you need to renewable to save the planet, otherwise we will all die of warming. Germany is the #1 solar power in the whole world. So that's the data. Okay, and wind is China and the US. It is not true that the cost of renewables is declining. In fact, the renewables in the case of Germany is the main cause why the electricity prices in Germany is rising. From only 2.4% of the monthly bill, it went to 21% in 2014. The feed-in tariff alone in Germany. And if you look at when you talk about German technology, even them, they cannot really improve the capacity factor of solar and wind. No? Wind is about less than about 15%, solar about 18%. It depends. During winter, it's almost zero. 3 months of almost zero output when you need a lot of electricity. Then the solar will produce nothing. Even if Germany is the #1 solar power in the world. See, as of last week, no, the yellow is this is from January 2015 to January 2016. Look at the yellow. That's the solar. Where are they? From November up to the present, they are almost owl, absent without leave. And yet they get a lot of money, a lot of subsidies. These are news reports. Can you imagine at this time in Europe and they talk about blackouts? That is the industrialization. UK case. electric to rise, winter freeze, rationing in UK at this time of the century, no? So backward. Winter blackout. I mean, these are supposedly things of the past. You talk about blackout in Europe, and you have that in the newspaper, in big media outlets in Europe. Yeah. Madness. And still, the UK turns to diesel. Okay, 5 minutes. And here, if you go to Bangi, to a plant, you will see there's a wind farm, zero tourism, zero fishing village, nothing. Zero economic activity. Why? Because the wind towers can fall down on you. If not the blade, it's the tower itself. That's why if you look at this, they look picture, but look at Bangi, zero, nothing. Zero economic activity when there's windmill. Because the dangers are correct. These are not Photoshop. These are real pictures, no? Expensive electricity. As again, the repeated, we have the second most expensive electricity in Asia. And so, therefore, the default position, all measures should be to bring down the price, not invent new schemes to further raise it. So, we have energy, here we have actually energy poverty compared to, even to Vietnam. No? Indonesia, only 680 kilowatt hour per capita, whereas Germany in Vietnam, 1,300, Malaysia, 4,400, and so on. Why? Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Singapore, they depend more than 90% on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels is good. It's not evil. If you want, if you enjoy the good lives of Hong Kong, Singapore, because they have lots of fossil fuel. Government bureaucracy is a disease. It's a bureaucratism and governmentalism. No one moves, no one starts anything unless you get a permit, the permit of the bureaucrat. From the barangay to the local to ERC to the UA, local and national, no? Then Philippines invented a new scheme for expensive electricity. You have already expensive electricity, then you invent a new scheme to make it more expensive. Here is a case of, the renewables cronyism is worse in the Philippines compared to other Asian countries. I like this because in this presentation by Vince Perez, he showed that he is the head of WF, which is lobbying, a non-profit lobbying, so that his two for-profit corporations will make money. Okay? So he's using the word half, the left hand, non-profit so-called, so that his right hand, corporation will make profit. So here, wind is about 15%, 13% capacity factor, solar about 18%, and 12 hours output is zero. When you need a lot of, when there is dark streets, when the streets are dark, there are more road accidents, there are more crimes. So you need a lot of electricity in the evening, and then solar gives you zero. To a cheaper electricity. Professor Romaster earlier said that the price of non-renewables is rising. It's not true. The price of non-renewable, the fossil fuel is actually declining. No? Now it's $32 per barrel WTI. No? Both coal, natural gas, and crude, they're all declining. And but despite whatever people say, countries are really spending more on coal power plants. And why? Because in period of global cooling, we need a lot of electricity. There will be more farming from outdoors to indoors farming, and you need a lot of electricity, whether it is hydroponics or tilapia farming, or chicken farming, duck farming, and piggery and cattle farming. You need lots of electricity because you have to transfer a lot of agriculture from outdoors to indoors. Climate change is natural. It is not. It is mainly not. Some man-made maybe, but it is mostly nature-made. Extreme weather, they are precedents. So therefore, there is the zero climate basis for renewables cronyism. energy rationing and favoritism. What do we do? Take advantage of low oil prices, fossil fuels, have more fossil power plants. Reduce government bureaucracies. It was, no need to, because the previous panel already expanded this panel. The RE Act of 2008 should be revised. Well, the best case is to abolish it, no? Or at least remove the FIT and RPS provisions. Prepare for global cooling. Tapos na yung global warming. And do large-scale dredging of lakes, rivers, and creeks. Spend public money there. To spend on global climate junket meetings are useless. Thank you.
What can I say? Wow, yeah, that's vintage Nonoy for you. In the old days, he used to make us laugh. Now he makes us think. All right? Now I don't know how to describe him anymore to our mutual friends, whether he's a movie acting policy thinker or policy thinking movie actor. Maybe both. Okay, can I call on the three speakers up here on the stage so that we can proceed with a short Q&A session, 10 minutes? Okay, maybe we can have 3-4 questions from the floor. Well, depending on how long they are. Do I see, please, the gentleman on my right? Identify yourself and then the person you'd like to answer your question.
Hello. Hi, I'm Mark Takderas from Clean Air Asia. We are an NGO for advocating clean air and livable cities. I think one of our studies was referenced by the second presenter,
Ms. Salazar?
Ms.
Yeah.
Salazar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to direct my questions. Actually, some of them are comments for Ms. Tamayo. You requested for some comments because your work is, your research is a work in progress, right? Okay, first off, I'd like to clarify, okay, some comments first. I guess I'd like to ask what's the motivation for choosing those specific policies to include in your tool? I presume that you are developing a spreadsheet-based model that uses assumptions that have been used by other models as well. Now, in the current, in the landscape, in this field, I think a lot of models have been made that incorporate several other policies as well, and those that you have chosen is only part of those. So I wonder why you chose those specific policies. So that's the first one.
Do you have another one?
I have others. I'll pick just two more. A clarification on your geographic scope. Are you developing both national and city level model and tool? And then the last is how do you intend to incorporate health impacts into your model? Because there have a lot of attempts at doing cost-benefit analysis, and like you said, they focus on individual issues, but incorporating them into one spreadsheet tool, I think you're right, it hasn't been done. So how do you intend to do that?
Okay.
And one recommendation. I think you'd like to look at sustainable mobility model of ADB, and I think you'd also like to look at the low carbon tool developed by ITPS in Japan. So yeah, just to recommend some.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah,
quickly?
thank you for the question. So firstly, the intention is to make the model customized to the Philippine context. So to answer your second question, I think, of whether I will be using assumptions used by other models, the answer would be no. That's why I'm having difficulty in actually proceeding with the creation of the model and running the model, because the data that I would like to use are not actually available for the Philippine context. There are data on transportation, okay, for example, vehicle kilometer traveled, but at the national level, okay, and just an average, a point estimate. I would like to have, ideally, have a distribution of the vehicle kilometers traveled. So for example, in the US, we have what we call the National Household Transportation Survey, which regularly collects data on travel patterns of US citizens. So they have actually vehicle miles traveled for each state. Okay, so there is a distribution for vehicle miles traveled for each state, as well as driving cycles. Why is this important? Vehicle kilometers traveled as well as driving cycle actually affect energy efficiency. And if we just use data from other countries, that would not be representative of how we actually spend energy here in the country. I think it is very basic that we should have this hard data, okay, empirical basis for actually making policy decisions, and they are not currently available. So that's actually one of the main points that I wanted to convey in my presentation, that one of our basic needs right now is a database that is publicly available, not just to researchers, but to decision makers as well. So that is to answer your second and maybe some of your other questions. For your first question of why I chose those policies, those are the major policies that are in place right now at the national level. I am not aware of local specific transportation policies that actually link to those national policies. Those policies are not meant to be static, so those are just starting points to somehow illustrate, okay, how the model can be, or how the tool can be used. Did I address all your questions? Okay, and thank you for the recommendations on the other potential tools that I can look into.
Any more questions from the floor? I saw somebody from this side raising his or her hand earlier. Please.
Ed Fernandez, Department of Energy. Actually, this is not a question, but some comments. Regarding the last speaker on climate change, I was a bit confused about the presentation, whether it's a pros or cons. But then, let me share with you. If you're going to review, there is a report in the VECM website. And this is the monthly market assessment report. There is a part there where it says 2,000 plus megawatt scheduled outage. So you remove that. There is another 2,000 plus. And these were not offered in the market. Now, if we don't have those RE, I tell you, those prices in the next stock up will shoot up. So my point here is that I'm not an advocate of RE, but then it's just a matter of setting the record straight. With those REs available in the market, it somehow level up the prices. If they are not there, those 2,000 will be eaten up by diesel, the bunker, and these are high rate. So the point here is that market will have a high rate.
Thank you. First, as I said, I have nothing against renewables per se. I am against subsidies. Okay. We already have the second most expensive power in Asia. So all other policies should be geared towards reducing. So the FIT and the RPS system is towards increasing. So that's why I suggested that the RA law should be significantly reduced or should be abolished. Part of the bureaucratism, I think, is that people hate coal because of the Greenpeace World Wildlife Fund drama, no, including the UN. And therefore, we should have more coal, more wind and solar, and bureaucratize the non-renewables. So that is one reason why the entry of so-called non-renewables is given a hard time, no? I'm from Negros. We're dependent a lot from coal, from energy, from Cebu. So there was a proposal to put up a coal power plant in Negros, and all the activists were running, blah, 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 aided by the Greenpeace coming to Negros. And they say that coal is wrong, therefore you should have no coal. But they enjoy electricity through Facebook from coal power from Cebu. Okay, you can see the hypocrisy. So I think that if some people would like to put up solar and wind in their front, their house, fine. They walk the talk. Okay, they spend their own money. But if you put up, then you ask me to pay for it, that's wrong. Okay, so yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. I am told that we have time for just one more question. Was the lucky one? Going, gone? Okay. With that, we'd like to close the session. Please join me in thanking the speakers for an afternoon well spent. Thank you all for staying. Thank you. Picture?